Well, hello, superstars. It is your pal Danny weighing in with a Words Are Matter. It's been a minute since I've done a standalone Words Are Matter video, and because the recent Joe Rogan, Douglas Murray, Dave Smith interview just happened, is in the news cycle, I didn't want to wait for another solo podcast to share this particular unpacking with you guys. So, this whole conversation was a demonstration of two things. One, on the Dave Smith side, it was a demonstration of how to peacefully, respectfully, and diplomatically disagree. Dave did a phenomenal job of not just staying respectful and staying measured, but also continuing to lean in to Douglas Murray's various arguments, logical fallacies, inanities, insults, what have you. Dave continued to lean in and to look for their Venn diagram of crossover. He was so generous in how he engaged that conversation, in continuing to validate Douglas Murray, in continuing to find the places wherein they were of like minds, and continuing to try to see things from Douglas Murray's perspective. Douglas Murray, on the other hand, was a crystal clear demonstration of how not to communicate if our goal is to foster peace, to foster understanding, to foster feelings of goodwill, as well as to educate others as to why we're thinking what we're thinking. High level overview, Douglas Murray avoided and evaded any and all opportunities to unpack his perspectives, instead leaning into straw man arguments, into ad hominems, into insults. It was kind of dazzling how consistently poorly he communicated. But I didn't go through the entire thing and clip all of the various examples of how not to communicate, courtesy of Douglas Murray, but there was one languaging pattern that was so overt and so consistently repeated that I really felt inspired to speak to it. So I'm going to share my screen, and I have edited a little supercut of this particular speech pattern. And then after we play it, we're going to unpack how this is operating. So here we go. Fair use.
I'm saying that there's a weird way in which figures like him, whose ideas are not being countered when they are raised, are given platform after platform to spread their views. Yeah, I think it's weird to mainstream very fringe views constantly and not give another side. I think that's weird. These people are such experts in how you see a society go weird. Oh, nobody said it was. This is like, There's a very weird argument that you now hear about this. It's a very weird thing to go back, zone in on a man, say this one thing is a mistake and should characterize him, and you ignore everything else. It's like some weird jujitsu move.
No, I don't.
Where you say, hang on, you know all about this as well. You say, I'm not a historian, but I'm going to spend my time talking about history. Isn't it weird to go around, for instance, let's get to the last year and a half. It's a bit weird to be simultaneously saying, I'm not an expert on a conflict, and talking about it everywhere. I think that it's a weird move to say, I'm not an expert on this, but I'm going to talk about it nonstop. That's a bit weird, because also then it's like the debate me bro thing. But I just got back from Ukraine again the other week, and it's so weird. I saw the Oval Office meeting as it happened from a trench in the front line between the Russian and Ukrainian positions in the east of the country. And it was so weird seeing the way in which this country's territory was being talked about by outsiders.
So, in case you didn't pick up on it, the theme of this analysis is Douglas Murray's pejorative use of the word weird as a means of programming the viewers to dehumanize and judge as somehow like deranged or distorted people who are behaving in ways that rub up against Douglas Murray's own judgments. So I counted 17 uses of this pejorative weird coming out of Douglas Murray's mouth in a 3-hour conversation. And the reason why I want to call our attention to this is Notice in 100% of those instances, he didn't say this action is weird. There might have been a couple instances where he said it's weird that people offer opinions when they're outsiders or whatnot. But the primary use of this is not that doesn't resonate with me, or I find it bizarre when people do this. It's this objective projection of weirdness onto people who are doing things that Douglas Murray doesn't approve of, or to judge the moves themselves as weird, right? And so what this type of repetitive 17 instance programming is doing is, for those without eyes to see and who are just blindly internalizing what Douglas Murray is saying, it's programming them to think Joe Rogan is weird for platforming people who aren't serious historians, or Dave Smith is weird for offering opinions about Israel when he hasn't visited Israel, right? Whatever the instance is, this particular use repeated over and over and over again, keeping in mind that repetition is the number one tool of the propagandist, is to sully the people who are behaving in ways that Douglas Murray doesn't approve of, and to paint the narrative that there's something wrong with them. Now, this is super dangerous when we're watching this like kind of side psyop emerge of equating, conspiracy theory or questioning narratives with mental illness, and then moving into, deeper and deeper potential realms of civil liberties grabs if these people are deemed by, nefarious judicial sources as not being competent to take care of themselves. I'm not saying that this is what Douglas Murray is doing, but I am saying this is absolutely a propaganda technique to project this judgment of weird onto things that don't jive with Douglas Murray's preferences. And they're not just not resonant or not aligned or choices that don't line up for him. They're all weird, right? And weird makes it easier for us to marginalize, to cast aside, to dehumanize, to treat other people poorly, right? They're not just making like healthy adult choices that Douglas Murray himself wouldn't make. They're weird. There's something off. Now, this was another phrase that he repeated, and I didn't supercut it. I think there's something a bit off. I think there's something a bit off by platforming people who aren't serious historians, whatever. So we saw this repeated, a bit off or weird. So I just want to draw our attention to this so we start to see how specific words are being weaponized and used over and over and over again to program the public mind to judge others as delusional, put them in the lunatic category, and thus making it easier to demonize and dehumanize. As you are inspired to learn more about this propaganda technique and all sorts of propaganda techniques, I suggest picking up a copy of Pop Propaganda, an Illustrated Guide. If you'd like to go deeper, I suggest diving into my 11-module Pop Propaganda Digital Media Literacy course, which I created for teens who are being homeschooled, and which is also appropriate and dazzling for parents and grown-ups alike. Thanks so much for tuning in, superstars. I will see you on the flip side.